What's up everyone, I'm Matt with Ozark Overland Adventures, and if you have been following the build on the Gladiator since I got it a year ago, you know that I bought it with a specific purpose in mind, and that was to build it into an Overland rig, and had very specific ideas about what I wanted to do with it. Already knew the lift I wanted to put on it, the tires, the rack, all that sort of stuff. And the lift that I chose to go with was the Rock Krawler 3-inch X Factor lift for the Gladiator. And we had that on my wife's previous JK and loved the way it rode. And because of that, chose Rock Krawler with the X Factor series because of the 8 adjustable control arms. And that's what I wanted. Out of the box, absolutely loved that lift, but after having it for right at a year now, realized that there were some issues with that lift when it came to building the type of rig that I wanted to build. Ozark Overland Adventures is proudly supported by the More Expo, the Midwest's #1 adventure travel consumer expo. Artemis Overland Hardware. They have one of the largest selections of overlanding gear available. Big Iron Overland Rally, where Overland Expo meets Music Festival. Shop Overland Apparel, your source for Ozark Overland Adventures merchandise and more. Open Road 4-Wheel Drive, makers of affordable, high-quality winches and recovery gear. Outback RV of Texas, the best place for Overland adventure trailers. And Moon, makers of the Moonshade portable awning. On my wife's JK, it was very much built up as a rock crawler. Wasn't a lot of gear in the back, no tin on top, so there wasn't a lot of extra weight on her JK. And in that type of situation, that rock crawler lift performed incredibly well. On my Jeep, as soon as I put the lift on, we took off to Moab to run the hardest trails that Moab had to offer. Cliffhanger, Pritchett Canyon, to name 2 of them. And that was before adding bed rack, tent, all the gear in the back. And in that regard, that lift performed incredibly well. Tons of flex, rode great on that long travel, and was very, very impressed with it. However, once I got home from that trip and we started building this out as more of a dedicated overland rig instead of more rock crawler, that's when the issues with the rock crawler lift started to surface. As I added the bed rack and the tent and all the gear in the back, well, my 3.5-inch lift was no longer 3.5 inches. The coils on it started to sag pretty substantially. And that was the first issue that I had with the rock crawler lift, was as you add weight on the rock crawler coils, they just don't hold up. So what I had to do was replace the 3-inch coils with the 4-inch coils. And that got me back to the height. But still, as I added weight, as I put the weight of our trailer on the back of it, it would start sagging again. So the next thing that I did was add airbags to it. And the airbags definitely worked. They helped a lot, but it was just one more thing. They squeaked a little bit when they got wet. In the coils, had to make sure that they were either aired up for when I was towing, aired back down when I wasn't, and it was just it was just kind of an annoyance. A good friend of mine, James, did warn me that the rock crawler springs would not hold up to the added weight of an overland style rig, and said you should buy Clayton. So when my wife got her JL, we decided to go with Clayton for hers, and I was crazy impressed with the quality of that lift, the size of the control arms. We put a tent and a roof rack and gear in the back, and it didn't droop at all. So I decided to make the change to Clayton on my Gladiator, and I am so glad I did. I went with a 3.5-inch Clayton premium kit for the Gladiator, and it's incredible. Here's the 4-inch rock crawler coil compared to the 3.5-inch Clayton coil. Very similar, but the Clayton coil is definitely thicker, and after picking them up, I can tell you it's heavier too. And the 3.5-inch coils gave me the same height, fully loaded down, that my rock crawler 4-inch coils gave me. And that's exactly what I was looking for. And now I can load this thing up, all the weight on it, I can put the trailer on it, and it does fantastic. So if you are building an overland rig and going to have a lot of weight in the back, the Clayton coils are night and day different over the Rock Krawler coils. The second issue that I had with the Rock Krawler lift was with the control arms. This is a factory control arm. It was off my Gladiator. And as you can see, the factory control arms have this little bend in it that allows for a little extra room for turning. However, the Rock Krawler control arms, it has a vertical bend, but it does not have this horizontal bend in it. And what that caused was, as you can see from the worn out part here, a very significant amount of rubbing at full turn. I was running 37-inch 1250 wide tires with wheels with -12 offset, which should have been great, and it just rubbed so bad that you could feel the lugs digging in to the control arm at full turn, and that was not fun. It definitely hindered turning performance. And one of the things that I love about the Clayton lift, here's the Clayton control arm, and you can see they have these really big beefy square tubes, but they keep the bend. So I am now running 38 1350 wide tires, and it performs so much better than the narrower tires did with this control arm. Now with the 1350 wide tires, I do have just a very little bit of rubbing here, right here in this bend, but not near as significant as what I had on the Rock Krawler arms. And I mean, as you can see, these are just crazy thick and beefy and strong. And if you compare the joints on the end of it, there's the joint on the end of the Rock Krawler, that's the Clayton. I mean, there's just no comparison. This is so much bigger and so much stronger than what you get with the Rock Krawler. And I am crazy happy with the performance that I've been getting out of the Clayton. And I did wonder how the Clayton would compare to the Rock Krawler lift off-road, because I was crazy impressed with the Rock Krawler's ability to flex and articulate and keep my tires planted firmly on the ground. And let me say, the Clayton lift is currently blowing me away. I've had it out on a couple very nice trips with some real flexy sections with some deep ruts. And I get more articulation out of the Clayton lift than I ever did out of the Rock Krawler. I am running slightly bigger tires, 1 inch total height difference, so a 1/2 inch on the top side. And on the Rock Krawler lift, I did not have to add bump stops. I could stuff my tire up into my fender without any rubbing. But with the Clayton lift, my first time out, I was rubbing like crazy with the slightly bigger tire and the added flex. So I have now added extra bump stops to the front to try to mitigate some of that rubbing, and it's working really well. But the amount of flex that you get out of this Clayton lift is just incredible. And I didn't think you could get much better than the Rock Krawler, but I was wrong. The Clayton lift just flexes like crazy, and I am running the exact same shocks that I was before. Now on road, the Clayton does ride a little bit firmer than the Rock Krawler. The Rock Krawler, I could feel the softness. I actually put on a different set of shocks with the Rock Krawler that weren't as stiff as the Bilsteins that I'm running, and it was horrible. It was just very, very floaty and lots of body rolls around turns. So I put the Bilsteins back on. That fixed it somewhat, but you could still feel the softness. The Clayton is just so firmly planted because of the little bit thicker coils. There's no more body roll. You don't feel that floating feeling as you're going down the road. And the measurements that they gave you with the Clayton lift to dial in the control arms and set your caster and your pinion angles and stuff, I mean, absolutely nailed it. I can drive straight down the highway and take my hand off the wheel, and it just remains straight and true and drives incredibly well. I'm cruising at 76 miles an hour, and if you can't take your hand off the wheel and just drive straight with your lift, even going over these little bumps, then something's wrong. Your lift is not good. Your geometry is not correct. I mean, that's the way it should be. There are two key things that I do like about the Rock Krawler lift better than the Clayton lift. I will comparing the rear upper control arms, you can see these are pretty flimsy now after 20,000 miles. They have been well used, but one thing that the Rock Krawler lift does have over the Clayton lift is this has Johnny joints on both ends. And what that allows you to do is if you need to adjust your pinion angle, you can just loosen these jam nuts up and then put a wrench on this flat spot here and turn it and adjust your pinion angle. If you need to make adjustments with the Clayton arms, well, you gotta remove one end, make the adjustment, and then put it back in there. So that is one advantage to the Rock Krawler arms. But I am keeping the Clayton arms because beefier joints, and I'd rather have that than this. That's not good. And then the other is the sway bar end links. If you watched the install video on my wife's JL when we did the Clayton install on it, absolutely hated putting in the sway bar end links because you have to cut them to fit. And the Rock Krawler lift comes with some really beefy, strong sway bar end links up front and fixed tights in the rear. And I did not swap those out, so I've still got the Rock Krawler end links on my Jeep right now because they work so well. I mean, why change those out? They're just sway bar end links. And so I was very impressed with those. One other issue that I didn't realize I was having with the Rock Krawler control arms, these have 20,000 miles on them, and as you can see, there's a lot of play in this Johnny joint here. I was surprised when I took this off and this was as loose as it is. It's not I mean, it's not bad, but I was just surprised at how much play there is. And I did keep these greased on a regular maintenance schedule. These currently have about 2,000 miles on them, and I mean, they're still just tight and very firm in there. So I think these are going to last much longer. These are rebuildable as well, so very pleased about that with Clayton. So my recommendation, if you are building a rig that you're going to use as an overland rig and you're going to be adding weight to the back and lots of gear, go with the Clayton lift. They do such an amazing job designing their lifts to handle the added weight without a lot of sag, and they just do a phenomenal job of building it to accommodate, you know, a heavier overland rig. The flex that you get out of them, the quality of the control arms and the joints, the springs, I just can't speak highly enough about the Clayton lift. Well, I hope this video was helpful to you. If you're in the market for a new lift for your Jeep, give Clayton a serious consideration. I cannot be happier with it and highly recommend it. There is a link in the video description below to Clayton's website, and if you use the code Ozark5 at checkout, it'll save you 5% off your lift. If you would, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Check out our Patreon if you like what we are doing and want to support us in a tangible way and gain access to our GPS data and some special stuff that we do for our Patreon supporters. Go check that out. And go to Shop Overland Apparel for all your Ozark Overland Adventures t-shirts and stickers and patches and all that good stuff. We'll see you next time. Bye.